In case you missed it, last month a video was uploaded here on YouTube by a Norwegian entertainment reporter who in English pronounces her name Kirsty Flaw because she says that non-Norwegian speakers can't pronounce it. The video is titled "The Blake Lively Interview That Made Me Want to Quit My Job" and has since gone viral with almost 5 million views. The video depicts a perfect example of workplace bullying, a term that Kirsty Flaw herself has used to describe it, so props to her. Specifically, the workplace bullying technique of snubbing, which I coined, and I have a couple of videos on that. The video also illustrates many of the points that I have been making about workplace bullying for years. If you haven't watched the video, I'll link to it in the pinned comment along with Kirsty Flaw's subsequent videos about the incident. However, trigger warning, if you have been bullied in this fashion, although the video is only about 4 minutes long, it's painful to get through. If you are going to watch it, make sure you sit through all the way till the end to catch the massive eye roll from Parker Posey, the other actress involved in this situation. But you have been warned. If you don't know, Blake Lively is an American actress who is less famous for her acting than she is for her marriage and her friendship. She's famously married to Ryan Reynolds, a Canadian-American actor, 11 years her senior, Brangelina, who diversifies. He owns a telecommunications company and a European football club. They have 4 children, and together they are one of the few true Hollywood power couples a la Beyonce and Jay-Z. Blake Lively is also famously a prominent member of Taylor Swift's squad, which is relevant and which I will talk about later. To be honest, if I didn't follow Taylor, I would have no idea who Blake Lively is. That being said, even before her marriage, she was Hollywood royalty. She was born and raised in Los Angeles, and in high school, she was, get this, class president and a cheerleader. Her parents were in the industry, and all 4 of her siblings are also actors. The video in question is an example of workplace bullying because all 3 women involved are technically working. Again, this is Kirsty Flaw's job. She interviews celebrities for a living, and Blake Lively and Parker Posey are promoting their 2016 movie, which was unfortunately directed by Woody Allen. Ew. And entertainers are contractually obligated by the studios and the labels to do press. From the very beginning, Blake Lively appears to take issue with what she apparently considers the objectification of women. The interviewer, Kirsty Flaw, opens the interview by congratulating Blake Lively on what was presumably her second pregnancy. Blake Lively is very visibly pregnant and had already publicly announced her pregnancy prior to the interview. Kirsty Flaw says, first of all, congrats on your little bump, to which Blake Lively immediately claps back and says, congrats on your little bump, gesturing toward her abdomen, seemingly to suggest that she is out of shape and effectively body shaming her. Kirsty Flaw was not pregnant at this time, and if the camera adds 10 pounds, appears to be a tall, thin woman. Later, it was revealed that Kirsty Flaw is actually infertile and cannot have children despite wanting them, which, yikes. However, Kirsty Flaw laughs off the fat-shaming comment and proceeds professionally. The first question she asks the actresses is whether or not they liked their costumes because the movie is a period piece. Again, Blake Lively objects and asks Parker Posey, not Kirsty Flaw, whether or not male actors would get asked the same questions, to which Kirsty Flaw pushes back. The entire interview then rapidly devolves into the most perfectly illustrated example of the workplace bullying technique of snubbing that I have ever seen recorded. Again, I use the term snubbing, a word that interestingly has Scandinavian origins, to include not only the narcissistic silent treatment, but also all of the ostracism, exclusion, and isolation that takes place both inside and outside of the workplace. You are shut out of meetings and communication. You don't get invited to stuff, all the lunches, drinks, parties, dinners, other social gatherings. Workplace bullies physically turn away from you or walk, or even run to get away from you. The workplace bully enters the workplace and makes a big show of greeting everyone except you, or shaking hands with everyone except you, or taking lunch orders from everyone except you. It is something that I call willful ignoring. The workplace bully really, really, really needs you to know that you are being ignored. In the video, Blake Lively turns to focus almost exclusively on her co-star, Parker Posey, and together the two women engage in a dialogue that almost effectively shuts out the interviewer, creating an atmosphere of negativity, hostility, and tension to the point that the interviewer can no longer interject or participate despite her attempts to do so. Blake Lively appears to acknowledge the interviewer, and by acknowledge, I mean turn to face her and kind of make eye contact only a couple of times, both times seemingly to stress her distaste for the reporter's comments about women's bodies. Since the video aired, more negative information has come to light about Blake Lively's inappropriate behavior in other interviews, including during both the filming and the promotion of her current movie, which was ongoing when this video was uploaded. Another relevant fact that I will also discuss, altogether resulting in one epic fall from grace. Blake Lively has yet to publicly comment or issue a statement about the incident, and her celebrity stock is plummeting. There are multiple aspects of workplace bullying that this video perfectly illustrates that I want to discuss. First of all, as I've been saying ad nauseum for years, documenting doesn't work. The first unsolicited advice about workplace bullying from people who do not know anything about workplace bullying is always document. Document what? The whole point of workplace bullying is that it has to be as subtle, indirect, and passive-aggressive as possible, so the workplace bullies can never be called on their behavior and it can never get back to them. Almost all workplace bullying behaviors can be interpreted subjectively. Blake Lively's behavior in this video is an act of aggression that is intended to inflict harm. But if this video had not been recorded and uploaded for the entire world to witness, you tell me how Kirsty Flaw would have documented this. Granted, she's a freelancer, so presumably she works for herself, but if she worked for an organization, I can already hear the gaslighting. Well, I thought they were lovely. Well, I thought it was a good interview. Well, they talked about the movie. They answered your questions. What was wrong with it? What was the problem? Some workplace bullying behaviors, like the ones we see employed here, are so sneaky and underhanded that they are almost impossible to articulate, let alone understand, for people who were not there, even the non-narcissistic people in your life who are sympathetic and supportive. Often just don't understand and may even go so far as to gaslight you too when you try to talk about it. Unless you are lucky enough to find a very skilled and intuitive therapist who understands both narcissistic abuse and workplace bullying, you may not have anyone in your life that you can talk about this stuff with. That's why workplace bullying is a phenomenon that unfortunately people cannot understand unless they've been through it themselves. Another aspect of workplace bullying that I want to point out is something that I call the trigger moment. As targets of workplace bullying, we've all experienced the Jekyll and Hyde Gemini switch up, and it's baffling. Granted, most workplace bullies pathologically despise you the minute that they meet you, sometimes even before they meet you. But sometimes there are those coworkers that you think might be safe. You think everything's fine, and then suddenly they pull an about face and turn on you. Something triggered them, but for the life of you, you can never figure out what it was. Something went wrong. You just don't know what it was. You're just like, was it something I said? Unless you want to waste your money on psychics, you will probably never know for the rest of your life. In this interview from the get-go, Blake Lively is very clearly triggered for reasons that remain a mystery to everyone who watches it. Now, we all have our triggers. We just don't all have the same response to our triggers. Blake Lively is very clearly an antagonistic person with an anxious attachment style, and her anxiety has been pointed out by body language experts, and I'll try to link to one of those videos in the pinned comment too. And she has the fight response to trauma. So she chooses to create conflict because antagonistic people are addicted to drama. That's the bully profile. Another element of this video I want to point out is the requisite flying monkey in the form of Blake Lively's co-star Parker Posey. What else have I been saying about workplace bullying for years? Workplace bullies never act alone. All workplace bullying is mobbing. The word mobbing needs to be retired once and for all, because all workplace bullying is mobbing. Workplace bullies always gangbang. They always have their sniveling little minions, their collaborators, partners in crime, accomplices, co-conspirators, and hangers-on. They're stage 5 codependent doormats who enable them and do their bidding. They are the queen's bloody hands. In narcissistic abuse parlance, they are termed the flying monkeys. Even if you thought you were bullied by only one person, I guarantee you that person had someone somewhere enabling them. If you watch the video, you tell me how Blake Lively could have pulled this off by herself. If her objective with this workplace bullying technique is to ostracize Kirsty Flaw, she has to have a group to ostracize her from. She can't ostracize her from herself. And she is literally physically turning to Parker Posey for support. Workplace bullies seek out flying monkeys for 2 reasons. Number 1, they need the external reinforcement, a point that I will also discuss in a minute. If other people validate them, that means that what they are doing can't be that bad. Number 2, workplace bullying is a numbers game, and they know how to play it. There are always more bullies than there is a target, and that's how they make you look like the bad guy. That's part of their Darvo. In this sense, as I've also said before, workplace bullying functions exactly like a cult, a mafia, or a gang. It's all the same mentality. There are some bullies in the workplace who are hardcore evil. They are so evil, they don't have pupils. Dead souls with black hearts and black eyes. They radiate evil, it's palpable, it's tangible. They may be psychopaths, they may be possessed, they may be dark souls, I don't know. What I do know is they have absolutely no empathy. They make a career out of hurting other people. They not only see nothing wrong with it, they enjoy it. I call them the arch bullies. They are the ringleaders. They throw their weight around all over the workplace, and the minute they set foot inside the workplace, they draw a line in the sand. You're either with us or you're against us. It's black and white. There is no in between. They are the brown shirts, all marching in unison. It's interesting, the etymology of the word mafia is disputed. It's rumored to have Arabic origins because the island of Sicily was once an Arab protectorate. There is another island actually named Mafia in another part of the world that was also occupied by Arabs. It's off the coast of Tanzania, near Dar es Salaam, place of peace. What does an archipelago have to do with mafia? Well, you have the big island in the middle, and then you have all the little islands surrounding it. There is always a kingpin. In this interview, Blake Lively is very clearly the arch bully, the chief mean girl, and Parker Posey is almost literally hanging on to her. In the beginning of the interview, Parker Posey is initially gracious toward Kirsty Flaw. She engages with her, makes eye contact, invites her to participate by asking her a question. She deflects and distracts from Blake Lively's tacky, crass, fat shaming by drawing attention to herself. She attempts to make light of the situation. By the end of the interview, she's locked in. She's focused on Blake. She's shutting out Kirsty Flaw. She's doing what the mean girl in chief wants her to do, and that's because she has to. Blake Lively's married to fucking Ryan Reynolds. They're Hollywood royalty. Parker Posey can't afford to mess with that. What would happen to her if she did? She could be blacklisted. She's going along to get along. As much as we all despise the flying monkeys, you and I both have to admit that some of them actually are not bad people. Some of them do have empathy. And you may even detect a twinge of guilt in some of them because they know that what they are doing is wrong. Rather than evil, what they really are is just weak. They may be intellectually weak. Above all, they are morally and spiritually weak. They care more about covering their own asses than they care about integrity, karma, or even basic human decency. They are very aware of the line in the sand. They know that if they do not participate in the bullying, they will be targeted next. They're fear-based people. And that's how gangs operate. They rule by fear. Fear is the weapon that they use to corral everyone into jumping on the bandwagon. If you're from the hood and you're like, actually, I don't want to drop out of school to sell drugs for a living, I think I might like to go get an engineering degree, you know they're all going to come after you. No one is allowed to escape the black and white binary. In my 30-year career, I think I've observed only a handful of people in the workplace who were neither narcissistic nor codependent and who were able to occupy that neutral gray area. And those people are able to survive, I think, because they have some kind of protection, either earthly or supernatural. To my knowledge, Parker Posey has not commented on the incident either, but I have to wonder whether or not she feels any shame or guilt about her cowardice. Another aspect of workplace bullying I think this video perfectly illustrates is what I call the game of bad darts. Part of the function of narcissistic abuse is to trigger your insecurities. When you are in a romantic relationship with a narcissist, the narcissist knows what your real insecurities are because you have made yourself emotionally vulnerable. And they will sucker punch you right on them because that's what they do. It's strategic, calculated, deliberate, and intentional. In the workplace, however, workplace bullies don't know what your real insecurities are because you have not made yourself emotionally vulnerable and because they don't know you from Adam. And they will never know you because they don't want to. They are hell-bent on systematically dehumanizing and objectifying you because to them, you are not a human being. You're just an object. So when they want to trigger you, they have to take shots in the dark, and sometimes it's almost comical. They keep throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. Well, I whipped out some manipulative mind games to passive-aggressively insult Claire, but she didn't really seem to pick up on it. She just picked herself up and carried on as per usual, so that didn't work. Let me try harassing her with the rapid-fire series of 20 invasive, intrusive personal questions. Maybe that'll get to her. Nope. She just deflected everything and soldiered on. Maybe I should try violating her boundaries by going through her things and stealing her lunch and touching her body inappropriately. And if that doesn't work, I'm gonna have to get together some flying monkeys to orchestrate a narcissistic smear campaign behind the scenes to get rid of her. Workplace bullies test different workplace bullying techniques to see what does the trick. And if nothing does, they have to get rid of you. In the video, you can see Blake Lively employing the same tactic, just throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. She tries fat shaming the reporter, but Kirsty Flaw takes it all in stride like a good sport. Then she goes after her integrity, insinuating that she's sexist for asking a question that she believes is a double standard. But Kirsty Flaw pushes back. She's still strong here. She doesn't let that take her down. So finally, Blake Lively resorts to straight up full-blown hardcore snubbing mode, which is probably her go-to default bullying MO of choice. She's probably done it a million times before, and she's probably been doing it at least since high school. And she does it because it works. She is finally able to silence Kirsty Flaw and make her feel bad. You have to admire her persistence because she doesn't give up until she gets what she wants. Now, because workplace bullies don't know you, will never know you, and don't want to, they don't know what your real insecurities are. So when they try to trigger you, they usually do it with their own. And I will elaborate more on this in my next video, not to make this video any longer than it already is. But for example, if a workplace bully is body shaming you, obviously that person has body dysmorphia. They don't like the way they look, usually due to some kind of abuse. That one's a no-brainer. I say that the game of bad darts is humorous because when workplace bullies are trying to trigger you, they can come up with some pretty wacky stuff. It's just like, where did that come from? It doesn't land. They miss the mark. It's just like, I really appreciate what you're trying to do here. I understand you're trying to devalue me, but this does shit for me. I have no insecurity about this, and in fact, I've never even thought about it before. I'm not really sure what your angle is or what you're trying to accomplish, but thanks for sharing. In this sense, workplace bullies expose themselves terribly. When you don't heal your trauma, you lay all your cards on the table. If Blake Lively was that triggered by a comment about her body, my guess is she herself suffers from some kind of body dysmorphia, which is understandable given the industry that she works in. And by her snubbing of Kirsty Flaw, it's obvious to me that Blake Lively lives in abject terror of ever being perceived as not cool. She is probably pathologically obsessed with being the it girl, that bitch on the inside, one of them, one of the popular kids, one of the cool kids, an A-lister. So that's what she's projecting onto Kirsty Flaw by snubbing her. I'm popular and you're not. I'm cool and you're not. Which also leads me to believe that at one time, Blake Lively did not feel cool. She herself probably felt ostracized, rejected, abandoned, isolated, shut out, left out, not included, not accepted. And that hurt her so badly, she wants to make sure it never happens again. And now she is bullying another woman exactly the same way that she was bullied. If you don't heal your trauma, you become what you despise. On the other hand, sometimes narcissists have an uncanny knack, a sixth sense as it were, for detecting your worst insecurities about yourself and then sucker punching you right on them, because that's what they do. In that sense, they serve a spiritual purpose. It is to wake you up to your pre-existing wounds so that you heal them. Sometimes it helps to recognize that our abusers are actually just mirroring our own insecurities right back at us. Kirsty Flaw makes a living interviewing famous people. Maybe on an unconscious level, she herself has a desire for acceptance and inclusion, to be on the inside, one of them, in the in crowd, one of the popular kids, one of the cool kids. Maybe she does the work she does because she's actually looking for friends. And maybe Blake Lively unconsciously picked up on that and used it against her. She hit her right where it counts. You'll never be one of us. Now, speaking of the binary, that brings me to my next point, which is something that I've been talking about for well over a year now. Workplace bullies are very much people who are still on the seesaw, engaged in the tug of war, the black and white, either or, us versus them, binary opposition that they need to reinforce their ego and their narcissistic superiority complex. The human ego needs an other. It needs someone, somewhere, outside of itself to work against in order to perpetuate its existence. Workplace bullies need a sub, someone to dominate. They need someone to step on. They need someone in a one-down position, even someone that they don't know, a political figure, a celebrity, or even a fictional character. They need a scapegoat, a black sheep, or a villain. The only way a narcissist can win is if someone else is losing. I'm up because you're down. I exist because you don't. Again, it reinforces their narcissistic superiority complex. They have a pathological need to differentiate, to distinguish themselves, to be special. They are allergic to equality. They would rather die than be just like everybody else. That's why they are so pathologically obsessed with a whole bunch of bullshit that doesn't actually mean anything, like hierarchy, rank, title, and class. And in the absence of a sub, they have to create one. That's why they bully. I watch a lot of Netflix reality dating competitions, and it seems like in every season, there's always a villain. There's always one person everyone loves to hate. Maybe it's the editing, but for the life of me, I can never figure out what this person did that was so bad. Yes, maybe they are a little narcissistic or just immature, but not evil. But it seems like one contestant does one thing one time that offends another contestant, and then the narcissistic smear campaign just snowballs to the point that the villain has to apologize for something that they didn't really do and leave. Meanwhile, there are contestants on the show who actually are evil and no one sees it. I think often in a group dynamic, people create a villain arbitrarily just because they need one. And that's pretty much what we're all doing right here. Just clutching our pearls, popping our popcorn, and enjoying the downfall of a rich, powerful, and beautiful woman. Last year, I was watching another Netflix series about the Habsburgs. I'm not talking about the deformed inbreeds who look like everyone you've ever worked with. I'm talking about the later Habsburgs of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And it's all about how post-Enlightenment, their noblesse oblige, and their largesse vis-a-vis the masses. And I remember thinking, oh, please, these people need the barbarians at the gate. They need the teeming hordes of the great unwashed in order to reinforce their superior status. There is no aristocracy without la plebe. If everyone's royal, then no one's royal. There is no upper class without a class system in place to support it. If everyone's popular, then no one's popular. A-listers can't be A-listers without B, C, D, and Z-listers. And that's exactly what Blake Lively is doing here. She's creating a sub. She's reinforcing her narcissistic superior status. Her contempt for Kirsty Flaw is manifest. Her facial expression, body language, and tone are dripping with scorn, derision, and disdain to the point that it has been pointed out by body language experts. She really does think she's better. And she's essentially putting Kirsty Flaw in her place. I'm cool because you're not. I'm popular because you're not. Again, Blake Lively may or may not have her own trauma. If you have triggers, that means you still have trauma. Most abusers do. Every time I say that, I get slammed with ego defenses in the comments. Well, I was abused too. Well, I was bullied too. I didn't turn out like that. Really? Really? Join the club, get in line. It's a long line. People ask me all the time, what's the difference? Why do some people choose to become abusers and others choose to become victims? There may be a spiritual component. Some people really are evil with demonic possession or entity attachments. I'm into the woo-woo, but sometimes you don't need the woo-woo. Sometimes human psychology will do just fine. Rather than evil, I think what we are talking about here is something that I'm going to term external versus internal sourcing. And no, I'm not talking about extroversion versus introversion. No shade to my extroverts. Let me explain something to you, so listen up and let's talk about it. People who are empty, people with no identity, no real authentic self, no internal life, people who do not know who they are very heavily dependent on external stimuli to tell them who they are, what to think, and how to feel. They are by definition externally focused. They respond to external positive validation and negative reinforcement. All human behavior has a reward. This is Stanislavski's method. What's my motivation? Those of us who are less abusive may be more internally focused. We are our own battery chargers. We are our own barometers. We can self-generate. For example, I spent all weekend helping Angela overhaul her professional resume, and she not only did not pay me for it, but didn't even bother to thank me because narcissists are entitled. However, I derive pleasure internally simply from helping another person and from a job well done. It's like in the performing arts, Artists often talk about the difference between the performance and the process. Are you a stage person or are you a studio person? Some of us simply enjoy the process. We enjoy putting in the labor of creative work. The process is enough for us, and the external validation, the audience, the applause, is just icing on the cake. It's nice, but we don't need it. By the same token, we may also be very heavily negatively reinforced internally. Some of us are walking around with an internal self-critic that at this point is out of control. That is all the abuse and the bullying and the gaslighting that has taken up free rent in your mind and become the screaming voices in your head. If you have an overactive internal self-editor, every time you make a mistake, you want to crawl into a hole and die. At some point, we have to be honest with ourselves and admit that sometimes the worst bully in your life is you. When you hurt other people, yes, you have. You're not Jesus Christ. You're not perfect. You done stepped in it. You stepped in shit. You put your foot in your mouth. It doesn't feel very good. If you are empathic, you can feel the pain that you have caused other people. So you course correct. People like workplace bullies, people who are empty and externally focused, simply don't have these internal self-correcting mechanisms set up because they never had to cultivate them. First of all, workplace bullies get a fuck ton of positive external reinforcement. Again, workplace bullies never act alone. One of the reasons they bully is that they are so heavily enabled, both inside and outside of the workplace. You know who their demon attendants are. They all egg each other on. It's like a form of mass hysteria. For example, if the workplace bully stands in the middle of a room full of people and passive-aggressively insults you, and every bystander and flying monkey in the room laughs uproariously, he loads up on supply. That is hardcore positive external reinforcement. It's like a pat on the head for a dog. It tells him not only did he not do anything wrong, but he did everything right. So he's just going to keep doing it. If your workplace bullies manage to eliminate you, I guarantee you they all congratulate one another. They probably go out for drinks together to celebrate your demise. At the very least, they all high-five one another. And the validation and the reinforcement continue outside of the workplace. Again, insecure people like insecure people. Insecure people have a pathological need to dominate, manipulate, and control, and they can only do that to other insecure people. They also have abandonment issues. So they have to keep everyone sick so no one can ever escape the spiritual ghetto. It's lowest common denominator thinking. It's groupthink, hive mind, herd mentality. It's a cult, it's a mafia, it's a gang. Workplace bullies' insecure spouses and friends also egg them on. They indulge them. They weaponize their mental health against them. They keep them insecure so they don't go anywhere. Ooh, she's coming for you. She's trying to take your job. You better nip that one in the bud. Oh, she thinks she's better than you. You better show her. Some of my workplace bullies have actually invited their friends and family members into the workplace just to check me out. I felt like a giraffe on a safari. It was obvious to me that my bullies had been trash talking me to death, and their friends and family members just wanted to see what all the fuss was about. And again, all of it was on company time and company pay. At the same time, as we all know by now, for workplace bullies, there is little to no negative reinforcement. No laws, no regulations, no rules, no repercussions, other than their own karma. But when workplace bullies get their karma, because they don't have enough humility to accept that it is their karma, and they don't have enough self-awareness to know what it is for, they will simply go into self-pitying, covert narcissism mode and feel victimized and sorry for themselves. In the Blake Lively video, we can very clearly see the positive external validation in the form of the flying monkey, Parker Posey. If you watch the video to the end, if for a moment you can take your eyes off of Parker Posey's massive eye roll, look at Blake Lively's face, and you'll see a creepy smile that looks a lot like Duper's delight. She got what she wanted. She eliminated her target, who left with an obvious expression of discomfort on her face. Blake Lively reinforced her narcissistic superiority complex and made another woman feel bad, which displaces and externalizes her own internal emotional dysregulation. And her smug self-satisfaction is manifest. At the same time, she's turning to her flying monkey for external positive validation. And Parker Posey obliges because she's contractually obligated to do so as her enabler. See what I did there, Parker? I showed that bitch. Yeah, Blake, you showed that bitch, and she had it coming because she's such a loser. The final piece that puts the workplace bullying puzzle together here is the target's vulnerability. Part of the dictionary definition of bullying is that bullies target people they perceive as weak. The key word here is perceive. It's a perception. Rather than weak, it may be more appropriate to say vulnerable. All abusers are weak, lazy cowards, and they like a nice, soft, easy target. They pick off the wounded animal at the edge of the herd. Why do people abuse kids and animals? Narcissists despise vulnerability. They look down on vulnerability like they look down on intimacy. If you did not have any vulnerabilities, I guarantee you no one would come after you. They can only access you through your pre-existing wounds and insecurities. No shade to Kirsty Flaw. I'm sure she's a strong woman, but not according to Blake Lively. Blake Lively has sensed in her some kind of vulnerability that she can exploit to her advantage. There may have been some insecurity, anxiety, nervousness, or fear. It could just be her foreignness and the language barrier. Kirsty Flaw is fluent in English. Scandinavian people start studying English in preschool, but she does have a slight accent. Or maybe Blake Lively just didn't like her clothes. Again, we'll never know. Long story short, in Blake Lively, we can see here an empty and insecure person who is antagonistic, anxiously attached, and externally focused because she's empty and insecure, who identifies in her victim a weakness/vulnerability, and who, together with the help of her flying monkey, creates drama with the fight response in order to reinforce her narcissistic superiority complex. Classic, classic, classic workplace bullying dynamic. The only thing I find interesting about Blake Lively is her astrology. She's a quintuple Virgo. She has all 5 personal planets piled up in Virgo in the 2nd house. Her husband, Ryan Reynolds, is a quintuple Scorpio. He has 5 Scorpio placements piled up in the 2nd house. These two are all about the money. I have a feeling that that is a match made not in heaven, but in hell, but that's a topic for another video. I want to point out that Virgo is the only sign of the zodiac that is a woman. The other signs are all animals or men animals. Aquarius, represented by the star card in the tarot, is non-binary. Libra is an object, but Virgo is definitely a woman, and she's an earth sign, so she's feminine. People with strong Virgo, and I'm not talking about Virgo sun, I mean significant Virgo or 6th house placements, usually have something going on with the mother. The mother is debilitated in some way. She may have been narcissistic, abusive, abandoning, neglectful, physically or mentally ill, addicted, or absent, or even dead. There's just something going on there. As a result, people with strong Virgo may tend to way over-identify with the mother to the point that it's unhealthy. It's giving toxic femininity. At the same time, people with strong Virgo may also care deeply about women's issues and may at some point in their lives do something to benefit women, even if it's just running in the race for the cure or raising a daughter. I'm saying this because Blake Lively, as a quintuple Virgo with 3 daughters of her own, may actually be onto something here. If it's not okay to objectify women's bodies, then why do we do it to pregnant women? Why do we feel as though pregnant women are fair game? Why do people feel entitled to touch pregnant women's bellies as though their bodies no longer belong to them? Why do we disrespect the bodily autonomy of pregnant women? Is it because they're fulfilling their reproductive duty to the collective? And why do we ask women about their clothes? Do men get asked the same questions? There is a double standard for women in every profession. And it's always all about our bodies, our physical appearance, and our pregnancies. These are all interesting points of departure for what could have been a productive and fruitful discussion. We need to talk about it. Instead, because of an antagonistic personality and anxious attachment style, emotional dysregulation, poor verbal skills, not to mention immaturity, Blake Lively lets the whole thing devolve into something that looks like the junior high lunchroom, and chooses to bully another woman instead of seeking her allyship in addressing women's issues. I mentioned that Blake Lively's friendship with Taylor is important. With all due respect to Taylor, she herself is obviously someone who has a lot of unhealed trauma, probably from a bunch of stuff that we don't even know about. She is working in literally the most toxic industry in the world. She has a lot of trauma around men. Maybe something to do with her father, or maybe all of her failed relationships really did a number on her. She also has this backstory of being bullied by mean girls in school, something that she has spoken and written songs about a lot. When she was in school, she felt like Kirsty Flaw, ostracized, isolated, rejected, abandoned, and left out. Taylor's very public flaunting of her famous squad during her 1989 world domination days was calculated for two reasons. Number one, she had been bullied a lot for her dating life, which to this day really hurts her a lot. So the squad was a strategy to demonstrate to the public that she's not boy crazy. She's a girl's girl, and she's all about the girls now. Also, she wanted to show the world that she had finally arrived. Hey everybody, look at me. They like me. They really, really like me. I'm one of them. Almost all of Taylor's friends at this time were supermodels, tall, leggy blondes like Blake Lively. And as I mentioned in my Pretty Privilege video, physically attractive people are usually misinterpreted as the popular kids in society. You can understand how someone like Taylor would want to be friends with someone who was both class president and a cheerleader in high school. And that's how Taylor tried to heal her high school trauma. In general, this is what Taylor does. She responds to bullying by working very hard to prove her bullies wrong. Anytime anyone negs her, she reacts and she course corrects. She does not shake it off. And that's why people keep coming for her. They know that she can be triggered and she can be negged, and they think it's funny. Sometimes if people are trying to get a rise out of you, that's only because they know that they can. And I will talk about this more in my next video. But Taylor, girl, we need to talk. The people who bullied you in school did that to you because they were assholes. If 10 to 20 years later, you're still trying to get their approval, you're fraternizing with assholes. I've said this before about snubbing, but it bears repeating. When workplace bullies snub you, I know it's hurtful, but if you can just take a step back and look at it cognitively, it can help take some of the edge off of the pain. Snubbing reminds me of the Five of Pentacles card in the tarot. The Five of Pentacles is a card in the Minor Arcana that depicts two mendicants in rags, one of whom is on crutches, walking in the snow at night outside of a church that is illuminated through stained glass from within. Tarot cards, like astrological signs and houses, have one basic meaning and then many additional layers of extrapolated meaning because adult human psychology is complicated and there are not only 12 people in the world. The basic meaning of the Five of Pentacles is loss, suffering, and hardship, particularly financial hardship, because pentacles or coins represent money. But what the Five of Pentacles really represents is abandonment. This is the fear of abandonment card. The truth about the Five of Pentacles is that you do not want to be inside that church with those freaking people. You know exactly what they're all about and you want no part of it. The Blake Lively video is very clearly showing us what we really knew all along. There's nothing cool about the cool kids. The nerds in the marching band are the way to go. The nerds in the marching band end up very happily married for decades, while the quarterbacks and the cheerleading captains end up with alcoholism, divorces, and kids with drug addictions. My bullies, including those in my own family, love to call me a loser and a freak. And every time they do, if by freak they mean different from them, I will take that as the highest compliment they can possibly pay me. The nerds, the losers, the freaks, the misfits, the outcasts in society are always your best bet. Because in the end, Manic Pixie Dream Girl will be the queen of the underworld and she will be exalted. Blake Lively's friendship with Taylor is relevant here for another reason. Taylor is also unfortunately someone with a lot of enemies, some by her own doing and some not. She has a lot of enemies because of all of her years of petty, vindictive revenge seeking. Writing diss tracks is not the tip of the iceberg. But she's also a social justice warrior who advocates for artists' rights. She is successfully re-recording her masters and I believe preparing to launch her own label, which would revolutionize the music industry. And that's pissing off the entire industry because mainstream record labels don't want to be made redundant. Also, people say Taylor has the power to influence the election if she makes an endorsement. The Swifties are a cult. They are probably the biggest cult after the TFG January 6ers, and they will swallow wholesale anything that she spoon feeds them because they don't have the capacity to think critically. And that's pissing off half the country because no one can stand that much power in the hands of a woman, especially an unmarried, childless cat lady. In a reading from December of last year, which I'll try to link in the pinned comment as well, Aphrodite, best tarot card reader on YouTube, hands down, and he lives in Austin, was talking about how a lot of people are coming for Taylor. And he said if they can't get to her, they're going to start going after her friends. He said, what's the best way to destroy a queen? Kill her army. That's the mafia analogy again. 8 months later, it's starting. Blake Lively is just the first to take the fall. I predict we're going to start hearing random stuff about Selena Gomez, Gigi Hadid, Cara Delevingne, the Haim sisters, Jack Antonoff, anyone in Taylor's inner circle. The strategy here is to call into question Taylor's character. Like, why would you listen to someone like that if that's the company that she keeps? And it's working. Read the comments. Blake Lively has been outed as a narcissistic mean girl. And so people are starting to wonder if Taylor is too. I'm just saying this for two reasons. Number one, this is bullying on a macro scale, but it can happen to any of us. Part of the function of abuse is to isolate the victim. They have to get you alone so that you have no support. Almost all of us have had the experience of workplace bullies coming after our interpersonal relationships, both inside and outside of the workplace. If you manage to form any alliances inside the workplace, I guarantee you workplace bullies will make a beeline over to those people and try to sabotage those relationships with smearing. And they will even go so far as to hunt down your connections through social media to try to sabotage your relationships with friends and family members. The second reason I'm saying this is that with all due respect to Kirsty Flaw, I'm really sorry for what she experienced, but she's lying. She's a liar. She says that her decision to release this video was purely coincidental. The fact that this video was uploaded in the middle of Blake Lively's highly controversial promotional tour, her first in 4 years, exactly 3 months before an election that her best friend could influence, is not a coincidence. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I just smell bullshit. Kirsty Flaw is a freelance entertainment reporter. I'm not sure that's a thing. I'm sure she always needs cash, and I'm sure she got a nice big cushy payout from the powers that be for participating in the spectacular undoing of Blake Lively. I hope that helps. Take care.